The Salty Sales Sages.
Hello and welcome to the Salty Sales Sages. I'm Simon Stillwell.
And I'm Greg Reiber.
And today we have part 2 of our conversation with Jeremy Steinbring from RevOnyx. And we are talking about revenue operations. So hopefully you've seen part 1. If you haven't, well, you need to go and look at that. And we'll continue now on what is, I think, a really critical conversation around revenue operations, which is a relatively new technology that companies can use for their GTM and ongoing revenue generation efforts. So with that, we'll get started again. Thanks for joining us, Jeremy.
Yeah. What's some of the advice you would give to firms to get around this siloed problem that CRM historically over the last 25 years that it's existed, or maybe longer, has given firms? So the idea of a sales, they want a system to do something, marketing want it to do something, IT need it to integrate to something else, and then customer services, say, well, we're only dealing with customers when they become customers, so we have different needs. How do you get around that siloed approach where if you have one big system, people use it differently, and if you have multiple systems, then they don't integrate?
Yeah, that's a great question. I have kind of two answers. The first answer is a business related answer, and the second answer is more technology driven. But the most impactful thing that you can do is make sure that you have alignment for I would say your executive and your leaders on each team. Because it's funny, we build our teams and incentivize them to only care about their thing. It's the biggest mistake. And it's funny because before I started my own company, I thought the same way because I was always working for a specific department. Like when I was working and doing more like a more technical role I only really cared about the technology. I didn't really care about, how sales was positioning the product. Everybody owns churn and retention.
Yeah.
Everybody owns sales. Every conversation that you have with a customer, no matter what team you work on, is a sales conversation, is a retention conversation. You're building a rapport and a relationship with them. And I just think that we incentivize people to not care about that. With sales, it's can you sign the dotted line? The one that drives me nuts is like with BDRs, SDRs. We just want to book meetings.
Yeah.
There's no incentive for them to book a meeting that was actually helpful, where they made a decision to buy, where they saw the value in it, and then they became a promoter of your brand. It ends once it gets on an AE's calendar, then you move on to the next thing. It's crazy to me. And I think that's what's interesting is a lot of that is driven by how you organize your team and how you incentivize and what you care about. So like when you're having one-on-ones and you're having conversations, you're training your team on how to operate, you're training them on their thing without the context of the overall customer journey and the business behind it. Like one of the things that I've challenged myself to do, even within RevOnyx, because while we're not, a super large team like some of the SaaS companies that we help, we still have all these same problems. And if I have, let's say, a HubSpot consultant who just joined the team, they know HubSpot great. They need to know how they're impacting the business and how they're helping me sell better, retain more customers, creating promoters, all those things. So I try to do my part in making sure they understand the broader picture. So the first thing is like we're organizing in our teams and incentivizing them to not care. So from a business perspective, we have to make sure that that's shared and understand that everybody owns all of those metrics. It's not just an individual or an individual department. On the technology side, I think it's really important to make technology decisions together as well, because I'm sure you've heard, oh, that's a marketing tool. The marketing team uses that tool, but you also have no idea how that tool operates. That's the main focus that Rev Ops has from a technical perspective, is to look at how maybe your marketing automation tool is affecting customer success, or is there an impact, or is there not, or are there ways you could leverage that tool for a different use case? The stickier that you can make a product, the better it is for your tech stack. And what I mean by that is the better you can utilize a single product, the more simple of a tech stack that you can have, the better, and it affects everybody. So those are really the two big things. But It says a lot less about the technology. I mean, I'd love selfishly for it to be more about the tech because that's what I do, but you can have the best tech stack, and if you don't understand that as a salesperson you impact retention, there's not much I can do. No CRM is going to fix that problem.
I think it's fascinating because I see this all the time, as you can imagine, right? And it's really simple. Often it's just between sales and marketing, right? Most companies you talk to, they're blaming each other. Not my fault, marketing delivered me shitty leads. Marketing people saying, well, we deliver great leads and salespeople couldn't sell the way out of a wet paper bag, right? That stuff is constant. Do you think, though, that the technology and either having RevOps as a function, a good RevOps function, or bringing a company in like RevOnyx can actually help that through technology, help solve that problem of awareness and understanding that this is one continual process, right, that exists right the way through to renewal and referral and ongoing, client satisfaction. That whole process can actually be helped by thinking about the technology, and therefore you bring everyone together. Do you think that's possible?
Oh, yes. In order to get buy-in with anything in life, you have to understand the why. You can't understand the why without the story. You can't tell the story without the data.
Yeah.
And so if you have good data, if you're capturing the right information, that data tells a story, which allows you to share with somebody the importance of the why, which will then give them the insight that they need to make and behave in a certain way. Somewhere along the way, if we don't have any one of those things, the train comes off the tracks. So you have to know what to track, right? Because it all starts with the story, right? Like you have to start somewhere. You have to have a goal. You have to have a vision. But once you start tracking that data itself, the clearer of a story you can tell, which means you can get to the why much faster, which means you can influence buy-in and decision making and behavior from your team. So even beyond revenue, just investing in your people, you can tell a lot about the data that's in the system, what they've influenced, their accounts they're assigned. You can learn a lot from what somebody is doing, and you can have them share what they're doing well with other customers. It all comes down to being able to back up your story, and it all starts in systems. The problem is no one has that clarity. So everyone's making assumptions. It gives you the evidence that you need to prove your hypothesis or to prove your story.
Measuring results something is a very tricky thing. And I see one of two things often, right? At two extremes. One, there are no KPIs. There's nothing, right? The KPI is, have we made a sale, yes or no, sort of thing. And what does the pipeline look like? And on the other end, I see organizations where they have 300 different reports, all these KPIs, and no one ever looks at them. And then they want a slight variation, so they create a new one, and it's just an absolute mess. So there must be a balance in terms of what are the KPIs that are important for a B2B, small and medium-sized business, the kinds that we talk to collectively. What are the key KPIs that they ought to be looking at? And do you have a view on what those should be?
And I've got an additional question. Earlier we talked about BDRs and SDRs, inside salespeople, and the fact that they were measured on just numbers of meetings. One of the reasons for that is you can measure a meeting is a yes/no binary outcome. How do you measure the quality of a meeting other than it resulted in something?
Both great questions. And I think they kind of stem from the same answer, which to me, retention is the most important thing to measure in a business.
Once you've got a client.
Yes.
Well, it kind of applies even when you haven't got one, because a first meeting going to a second meeting or a qualified next action is a kind of retention, isn't it?
Yeah. You've retained them for the next step. Yeah, I get that. Yeah.
In a meaningful way.
And this
you haven't retained them by taking them out for a steak dinner. I mean,
Right. I think this could be. There's obviously more KPIs that are important. Like I kind of break them down, and I try not to use the same metrics that people are used to. LTV, ARR, net revenue, retention, like we get all of that. We don't need to regurgitate that, but I kind of break it down into awareness, like value and growth, retention, and then promoter. And again, it's very biased. This is my personal belief.
Yep.
I'm not telling you to rip up all your KPIs, but when I learned a lot through running my own business and frankly doing a lot of this all at once and looking at it from a customer journey perspective. People have to know that they have to be aware of you, they have to respect you, and they need to know what you do. Then they have to trust that you know what you're doing and that you can deliver a result that makes their life easier. And then we need to retain them by proving that we can do that work and that we can find new ways to also, that they didn't know about, help them. And then they can tell other people in a similar position about their story that they had with you. And that really, if you boil it all down, forget all the KPIs and metrics that you hear about, like that is business. That's what it is. If you can do those things really, really well, but every business is going to have a different measure for that. I mean, I start with retention because if you've created a revolving door of customers that are not happy, they won't promote your business, which will make sales harder. And all the effort that you're putting into finding new clients will basically be wasted, because we all know it costs what is the phrase? It's like it takes 10 times more revenue and time to find a new customer than to keep. Everyone's heard that, but it is true. The customers that we see growing the most and making it through shifts in the market where some pretty extreme things have happened over the last 5 years in the market and to our world, the people that have really fantastic retention and a lot of customer advocacy, where they're doing a lot of the selling for them. They're telling their story for them. They're not having it makes everything easier. If you don't have a good product, if you can't provide a good experience, eventually you won't have a business. If you can't keep customers, if you can't add value, you could sell your way out of it for a while, but eventually it won't work.
Yeah, I agree. By the way, Greg, I would say that, and I don't know whether you would agree with this, Jeremy, or not, but one of the ways that the question that you asked, Greg, around how do you measure, if you like, that a BDR has delivered something valuable to an AE or whatever. And one of the ways you can do that is by defining having both those organizations, marketing really, or you put SDRs into marketing, right? Not into sales. Maybe that's one way of doing it, but you make sure that you measure exactly what it is, whether it's the ICP that is, and then the position they're in, whether they've got urgency or whatever. Those are the criteria that define whether this is actually something that's actually valuable or not just a meeting, right? It meets certain criteria around the ICP and any other factors that are important, and that's it, done. And if it doesn't meet that, it doesn't get counted as a meeting. And sometimes it's quite good to put the SDR teams in the marketing function, because then they really start to understand, everything starts to gel together. But anyway, that would be my answer. I don't know if you've seen that, Jeremy, and whether you agree that that's valuable or not.
Yeah, I think it all comes down to incentive, and that doesn't always have to be financial either. That could be shout outs, that could be opportunities to do different things. If a BDR cares more or is incentivized to think about, 6 months down the line, they become a customer. If you could incentivize that behavior rather than setting the demo, which is why even internally, and again, I don't know how realistic this is for most companies, but like I'm more interested with my team in building a profit sharing model rather than incentivizing based on, did you get a customer to renew, or, did you get them to do another engagement? Or I'm more interested in how the business is operating and tying the overall success of the business to the impact that they're having. And then the percentage of that pie that we give back to the team is based on the impact that role has in the customer journey, right? Because all the impacts we can say, there's a different percentage or a different level of influence that they have in them making a buying decision. And the more influence you have, the more incentive you should receive. And I think, the best idea typically rises to the top. as long as you're open to listening and having a conversation about it. So it says a lot about like how the team operates too. It can create a lot of animosity if you're all focused on different things.
AI is now the big buzzword, and we're already seeing impacts on LinkedIn. I mean, I was in LinkedIn today, and they've got some sort of AI summary, which is pretty useful. I'm using it immediately. What do you think the exciting areas that AI are going to deliver on, the low-hanging fruits of AI?
So the thing that's going to have the biggest impact and create the most monumental shift is AI in general. To me, specifically as it relates to RevOps and go-to-market teams, I think any place where data is being manipulated that takes a lot of time, a lot of human time and investment, the tedious data-like work, that's where AI is going to have a big impact. I also think agents on the bookends of the customer journey is going to have an incredible impact. However, and I always caution people that I talk to about this, I have a love-hate relationship, because where I think a lot of people are trying to supplement human with AI where there is no business for it doing it, at least at this stage. I mean, I don't know about you. I don't have a great relationship with ChatGPT, but I do with my wife. And that's because she's human. There are certain things, like, we ultimately are selling to other people, and I have a feeling that it's not going to be how it works for a very long time. Yes, we've come a long way. Yes, it's accelerating, but AI does not have consciousness. It is not a human. Like, it is still artificial, and it still relies on humans telling it what to do. So where there is mundane tasks, where there is a lot of data development, I think will be a big piece, right? If you want to develop a product, we've already seen tools like Lovable and Softer. Someone like me with no coding experience at all, no developer experience at all, I could go build a new product to sell. So like, we're going to see a lot of that happening because it's just text, it's just code. But where you start blending the line between when you need a human to do something or not, that's when I usually see bad things happen. My only other feedback is AI is just the new shiny object.
Yep.
Simon, you mentioned before, like before CRM, before like all of everything that we had, where we just had to pick up the phone or see people in person. It's the new shiny object. It's the new integration. It's the new CRM. It's the new thing. So we have to know when to use it and when not to. And I think right now people are really struggling to make that call. And they're trying to basically shoehorn it in where it really, in my opinion, it has no belonging.
I've got one final thing that I want to ask you, right? We should just wrap it up, because I agree with that. So what is if you had to give one bit of advice to business leaders who are looking to, set up a revenue operations function, or just better manage their business from a RevOps standpoint, what would that advice be?
Yeah. So every RevOps team needs 4 things. It needs a strategy owner, it needs a systems owner, it needs someone to analyze the data, and it needs someone to enable the team. Those 4 functions. Normally, you can find somebody in the strategy realm that also can do some technical work. They can enable, they can do training. But you have to build the team around that leader, around the vision for how you're going to build out your team. So if like you're trying to resource, start with somebody who is kind of a jack of all trades, that has a lot of experience in go-to-market, has some technical experience, that can be a leader, and then build in the order that I gave it. Systems first, under that person, analytics third, and then enablement fourth. And all of those roles should be owned by a particular person at one point. Or you should be working towards that.
And if you're not big enough to do that, can you use a firm like RevOnyx, working on a fractional basis in conjunction with the CRO or whatever? Is that a realistic way of doing it?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of our clients, we are all 4 aspects of a RevOps team, and we take over everything. Normally, earlier stage companies, we do that. And then as they bring on individuals and start building their own team, we accentuate where they have gaps. obviously advising along the way. So I think that's the whole reason why we exist. So rather than trying to DIY until you're ready to invest in 5 people, it helps you grow. So you're building that foundation that you can build off of, and you don't have to go back to the drawing board when you're ready to scale.
Terrific.
Thank you.
All right, this has been a fantastic conversation.
Fantastic.
Thank you so much, Jeremy.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jeremy, for joining us, and thank you to the audience for this. You'll find Jeremy's details to contact him in the notes wherever you've listened to this podcast. If it's on YouTube, it's in there, and if it's on LinkedIn, it will be in the thing. Look down on there for a link to him. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks all. Have a great weekend, Jeremy.
You too.
See ya.
The Salty Sales Sages.